afternoon. I'm Victoria Marshall with the latest news from the Washington Watch news desk. The Biden administration continues to defend yesterday's executive order, which temporarily shuts down asylum requests after daily encounters top 2,500 between official ports of entry. Here's how Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas defended it.
The goal here is to reduce the number of people who come to the southern border of the United States and cross illegally. Our goal is to drive people who seek and need humanitarian relief into the lawful, safe, and orderly pathways that we have built. And so individuals who arrive at our border and cross illegally will be barred from asylum, with exceptions.
The executive order, which still allows another 500,000 migrants to illegally enter the country before November, comes after Biden repeatedly claimed he didn't have the authority to address the border crisis. Nearly 10 million illegal aliens have entered the country during his presidency so far. The migrant crisis is having a massive impact on cities across the country. According to the New York Post, nearly 15% of New York City's hotels have been converted into migrant shelters. That's 121 New York City hotels, or 16,000 former hotel rooms, now off the market to help with the influx of migrants into the Big Apple. Of course, when supply decreases, demand increases, and costs go up. Tourists wanting to stay a night in Manhattan are now looking at an average of $300 for a hotel room per night. Analysts say such high prices will discourage visits to New York and hurt the city's tourism industry. The city, or New York taxpayers, are already footing the bill to house migrants in hotels. And in related news, yesterday, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned Congress about the rising threat of a potential terrorist attack in the U.S.
Just in the time that I've been FBI Director, we've disrupted multiple terrorist attacks in cities and communities around the country. We need funding to continue protecting America from terrorism. I touched on this earlier, but there was already a heightened risk of violence in the United States before October 7th. And since then, we've seen a rogues gallery of foreign terrorist organizations call for attacks against Americans and our allies. And given those calls for action, our most immediate concern has been that individuals or small groups will draw twisted inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks here at home. But now, on top of that, increasingly concerning is the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland.
Wray's testimony comes as millions of foreign nationals from China, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and other countries flood our southern border and enter the country illegally. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data, in fiscal year 2023, there were 736 known or suspected terrorists apprehended at both the northern and southern border. Now, this number does not include gotaways, or those who cross the border illegally and are not caught. That number is at least 1.7 million as of January 2021. And finally, Republicans are continuing to investigate the Biden administration's executive order directing federal agencies to run voter registration efforts in Democratic-leaning districts ahead of the 2024 election. During a congressional hearing yesterday, House Republicans asked witnesses why the Small Business Administration is running voter registration drives to majority Democrat demographics.
And so why do you think the first state selected by Joe Biden's Small Business Administration to implement this MOU was the state of Michigan?
Well, I think it's clear it's because it's a key battleground state, and there's strong allies in that state that were willing to form this agreement with them.
So if they truly wanted to help small businesses, like they say, they would have gone into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where per capita there are more small businesses in the Upper Peninsula. But you know what? That's red country. That's Republicans up there. This is clearly for political purposes, and it's unconscionable that the American people our taxpayer money is going towards this.
Critics argue the executive order violates the U.S. Constitution, which leaves election activities up to the states. And those are today's headlines. I'm Victoria Marshall. Up next is Watch and Watch with Tony Perkins. We'll see you tomorrow with more news.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
So let there be no mistake. In the aftermath after Rose's demise, the threat to birth control is very, very real. And that is why it is so important for the Senate to act. This is a simple bill and a simple vote. If you believe all women deserve to have contraception, then you should vote for this bill. That's all there is to it.
Well, welcome to this Wednesday edition of Washington Watch. That was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer earlier today. As usual, the claims made by Mr. Schumer are false. There is no threat to contraception in America, but the bill he has been pushing is a threat to life. Fortunately, just moments ago, the Senate refused to advance the bill. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford will join us later to discuss. Yesterday, by a vote of 247 to 155, the House passed legislation that would sanction the International Criminal Court, that's the ICC, after its prosecutor applied for arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister.
We should not be allowing the International Criminal Court to not just go after the Israeli prime minister, but the door that opens to go after our own service members, to go after our own generals, to go after America's interests. Because what happens here is going to be coming at us and our country.
That was Texas Congressman Chip Roy yesterday. Will the measure see the light of day in the Senate? We're going to talk with Nebraska Senator Pete Ricketts about this in just a moment. Also, Senator Ricketts will weigh in on the substance and timing of President Biden's executive order on illegal immigration. Additionally, doctors from across America will be converging on our nation's capital tomorrow to make a declaration that it's time to protect children from the dangerous and deceptive gender ideology of the left. We're going to talk more about that on this edition of Washington Watch. We'll also discuss the controversial actions of the Biden administration's Small Business Administration.
This is not rhetoric, Mr. Chair. This is reality. The Small Business Administration is engaged in electioneering at the taxpayers' expense.
That was Missouri Congressman Mark Alford yesterday pointing out in a Small Business Administration oversight hearing that taxpayers are funding a Democratic voter registration program through the Small Business Administration. Former Ohio Secretary of State Ken Blackwell will join me in studio to talk more about this and other election-related issues. Well, would you like to get the latest news and information all from a biblical perspective? Well, today you can download the Stand Firm app. It's our new digital platform, brand new. You'll not only get news, information, and Washington Watch, you can connect with fellow believers and engage with government officials nationwide right from the app. Be sure to leave a 5-star rating and help us achieve our goal to be ranked among the top 10 news sources nationwide. Again, you can find that in the App Store. It's Stand Firm, or you can text APP, APP, to 67742. That's 67742. Reactions continue to swell over the executive order President Biden authorized yesterday regarding the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, this policy, which comes after this administration has allowed in more than 10 million illegal immigrants into the country, stops border officials from admitting new asylum seekers once the 7-day average of daily encounters at the border exceeds 2,500. However, there are many, did I say many? Loopholes. So what is this really about? Joining me now to discuss this and more, Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska. He serves on 3 Senate committees, including the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Ricketts, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much for having me on, Tony. I appreciate it.
All right, so let's talk about the substance and the timing of the president's executive order yesterday. What does it do?
Well, frankly, this is too little too late, and it is just a naked political ploy in an election year. When Joe Biden took office, in his first 100 days, he issued 94 executive actions to undo all the Trump-era policies that helped President Trump bring those illegal crossings to a 45-year low. So, for example, he stopped deportations. He stopped the remain of Mexico. He stopped the internal enforcement that Trump had made a priority, as well as going after sanctuary cities. He stopped building the wall. Trump had built 500 miles of the wall. And what this did is send a message to the whole world that our southern border is open. And so thus the 10 million people who've tried to enter the country illegally since this has happened, since Joe Biden's opened our border, and all the things that go along with that, the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, fentanyl is the leading killer of young people in our country. The national security crisis this has created. All of this has happened because of Joe Biden, and Americans know it. And now Joe Biden, because it's election year, says, hey, I want to look like I'm trying to do something. So his 95th executive action is to somehow try to limit it. But again, 2,500 people a day is still a huge number when Jay Johnson, Obama's Department of Homeland Security secretary, said that 1,000 was a crisis. So he's not addressing the crisis, he's maintaining a catastrophe.
Senator, we've heard for the last 3.5 years that the administration had no authority. The president said, I can't do anything. I have to have Congress to act. I mean, what did he find, some magic lantern somewhere and get a couple of wishes so that he now all of a sudden found authority to do something? Isn't this exposing the fact that the president could have done something all along?
It's absolutely exposing the fact that the president could have done something all along. The fact of the matter is that Joe Biden has the same tools available to him that President Trump had when he brought these crossings to a 45-year low. Joe Biden just chose not to use them. Want to use them? It was the Democrats' policy to have an open border policy. They wanted waves and waves of people to come here illegally. And now he is seeing that in an election year, Americans don't like it. And frankly, Americans are not going to be fooled by this stupid gesture on his part. They're not going to be fooled by this last-minute weak attempt. And frankly, I think they're going to hold him accountable for it.
I think you are accurate when you look at the polling data, Senator Ricketts, that this is driven more by politics than anything else. When you look at the president's actually losing his own base on this issue, when you look at African-American males under the age of 40, I mean, he's losing them. You look at the Hispanic population, they don't like his border policy. So these are kind of reliable voters for the Democratic Party historically.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why this is such a transparent political ploy on his part. And frankly, as I travel my state, the two big issues that people talk to me about are the southern border and inflation. And they're both created by Joe Biden and his terrible policies. And as I talk to my colleagues here in the Senate, they tell me the exact same thing. It's about the border and it's about inflation. And I think the message is finally getting through to President Biden. He's trying to do something about it. But like I said, too little, too late, ineffective, and people will not be fooled by this.
I mean, according to Gallup's monthly data, Americans named immigration as the top issue facing the country in February, March, and April, surpassing even those who cited the economy. That's despite these horrendous price increases that we've had. They're saying it's the border. And then we're seeing these, what used to be called soccer moms, who many say that the former President Trump lost in 2020, have now turned into security moms and are moving away from the Democratic Party back to Republican candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, we've seen it with the national security crisis. Under President Trump, there were a total through 4 years of 14 people on the FBI terrorist watch list come across the southern border. Just last year alone, last fiscal year, 169 just the southern border came across. We've seen an 8,000% increase in Chinese nationals. I've been to the border 4 times. Customs and Border Protection tell me it's Iranians, it's Syrians. This is all putting a huge, put us hugely at risk. But a lot of those moms, what they're also seeing in their own school district. They're seeing a lot of kids coming in that don't speak English. And so the schools have to hire people to teach them English. They may be 4th grade age, but their education is going to be less than that. And so they've got to be brought up to speed. And so this is creating for schools a problem of having to hire the people, making taxes go up so that they can accommodate this. We're also seeing emergency rooms where more people are coming in that are not insured, don't speak English, and it puts a burden on our healthcare system. And people in our local area, they're seeing it now, right? And we're seeing it with the fentanyl deaths in our state. So this is why, when we say every state's a border state, this is what we're talking about. And people see it in real life. This is not just some, hypothetical going on at the southern border 1,000 miles away or whatever. This is something people see and feel every day.
Well, continuing that line of discussion on security, Senator Ricketts yesterday, the FBI Director Christopher Wray testifying that America is at greater risk today. He believes maybe an organized terrorist effort here within our own country, but stop short of connecting it to our porous border.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine that, first of all, Director Wray has been saying this for a while. He's been raising the red flags for a while because, of course, our border has been open for 3 years. I'm sure that he's getting direction from the White House not to connect it directly, but we all know what the reason is. I mean, certainly also since October 7th and the attack on Israel, we have seen that the Islamic extremists are doubling down on their determination to create a terrorist attack here. As I said, our border's open. It's not just people from South America, it's people from all around the world coming, and that's what's putting us at huge risk here.
I'm going to switch topics for just a moment, Senator, in our last few minutes together. You serve, as I mentioned earlier, on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Yesterday, the House passed a bill to sanction the International Criminal Court for their application for arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister. The White House has said they oppose these sanctions, said they want to work with Congress, but this isn't the approach that they recommend. I'm not sure what approach they want to take. Question is, will this measure see the light of day in the Senate?
Well, as you recall, my colleagues and I sent a letter to the ICC warning them that if they pursued trying to equate Israel with a terrorist organization like Hamas and tried to pursue these arrest warrants, we were going to take action against them. It's happened in the House already, and we are getting a bill together in the Senate to pursue that as well, or following on the House bill, to be able to get that passed. You know what? I got to tell you, this should not be a partisan thing. This is not just about Israel. It's about America as well, because if they can do it to Israel, who's not a signee to this, they can do it to us as well, and that puts our military members at risk. So this should be a bipartisan effort to sanction the ICC and let them know they've gone out of bounds on this one. And then if we can get that to the president's desk, the president will have to make the decision. But frankly, sanctioning the ICC is a way to send them a message that we are not going to allow this to stand.
Sanctioning, explain that for our viewers and listeners, what that means.
Yeah, so first of all, it would mean that if anybody involved with pursuing these charges, whether you're an investigator or whomever, if you're related to trying to pursue these charges against, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu, we are going to restrict your visa. You're not going to be able to come to the United States. We're going to restrict any transactions that you have with the United States, whether you're trying to buy property here or whatever. Essentially, you will be banned from the United States. You will not be able to come here. So that is one way that we can take a step against these folks who are in the International Criminal Court who are going forward with this. And then if that is not enough, we can work on other things to be able to do. But right now, that's a way to send a message to them, is that, hey, we are serious about this.
It seems like this is a no-brainer and that the Biden White House should be behind this. But as they've said, they're not. Senator Ricketts, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, Senator Pete Ricketts of Nebraska. All right, tomorrow here in Washington, D.C., a coalition of children's doctors and medical experts will launch an initiative to protect children from harmful gender procedures. We're going to talk about it after the break, so don't go away. More Washington Watch straight ahead.
Download the new Stand Firm app for Apple and Android phones today and join a wonderful community of fellow believers. We've created a special place for you to access news from a biblical perspective, read and listen to daily devotionals, pray for current events, and more. Share the Stand Firm app with your friends, family, and church members, and stand firm everywhere you go.
Sometimes the headlines are overwhelming, and it feels like we're all alone and there is nothing we can do. That is exactly what the enemy wants us to believe. Reading through the Bible, there are many things that are counterintuitive. One of them is that God never uses a majority. It is always a minority devoted to the truth. Here at Family Research Council, we are grateful to stand side by side with other believers for the truth. And as a result, God is making a difference. When you partner with us, you are joining with Christians around the nation in standing together for the truth of God's Word, supplying pastors and parents and school boards with training and resources to stand up against the indoctrination of our children. Together, with God's help, we can preserve freedom for the next generation. Go to frc.org and become a STAND member today.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Tony Perkins, your host. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. The website, TonyPerkins.com. And be sure and download the Stand Firm app. It's new. It's improved. It has everything you need to make your smartphone even smarter. So download the Stand Firm app. For the past decade, we've seen the transgender ideology capture mainstream institutions, including hospitals, medical associations, schools, and of course the Democratic Party and the President of the United States. Well, despite this ideological capture, there still exist many doctors and healthcare professionals that do follow the science, and they have serious concerns about the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents experiencing discomfort with their biological sex. Now, to bring this coalition together, the American College of Pediatricians has authored the Doctors Protecting Children Declaration, which actually launches tomorrow, and we're going to get a preview. Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Jill Simons. She is the Executive Director of the American College of Pediatricians. Dr. Simons, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what are doctors coming together here in Washington, D.C. to do tomorrow?
So, as you know, Tony, we at the American College of Pediatricians have been sounding the alarm for years about the harms that are being done to children in the name of, standards of care. 9 months ago, we launched the Biological Integrity Initiative, which included a website that is full of resources for parents, even physicians, policymakers, and it's just been flooded with people going to the site, contacting us, reaching out, and it's just become clear that this issue is getting more and more attention, which is good.
Right.
As you know, we aren't the only ones that have been sounding the alarm. There are many other organizations that have been concerned, and many, from all different spectrums of policy are concerned about this. And we've been talking for months, even longer, about how this needs to stop and end. And people have tried, and we have been pushed to the sidelines and discredited and, been dismissed, saying that there's a consensus.
Right.
Well, we're here to say that there is no consensus about these standards of care. And in fact, they are harmful. So we are saying enough.
Dr. Simons, it appears that the tide's turning. That, you plant a flag on truth even when it's not in vogue, but eventually people begin to come around. And it would appear to me that people are starting to come around because of the harms that have come from this radical ideology.
You're absolutely right. It has been turning. What really propelled the truth coming out were a couple things in the past couple of months. One was the leak of the WPATH files, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, and they exposed the very doctors who are doing these, that, their doubts, their concerns. So that was quite alarming.
And they hid those because they didn't want that information out there. They knew they didn't have the science on their side, but they hid it.
Right. It's horrible, some of the things that were leaked. And then recently we had Dr. Hilary Cass. She's the pediatrician that is leading or led the review that was done in England by the National Health System, looking at what is going on in these clinics. And she just released her final report where she, said that they need to stop the current protocols and really just released a lot of evidence against them.
So the declaration that you will be releasing tomorrow, what does it aim to do?
So we are calling on our medical colleagues, doctor to doctor, namely the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, there's a list of them, who are promoting these harmful protocols that they say are standards of care. And even despite Dr. Cass saying that they are out of touch and not based in evidence, they are doubling down and insisting that these are the correct thing that should be done. So we are uniting our voices, and we have presented them with a declaration listing facts, research, multiple.
Have they done that? Have they presented the research that is peer-reviewed to the medical community to support their positions?
Right. You would think such a major, standards of care would be based in, very good studies, but it's not. And that was one thing that Dr. Cass shed light on, and that we've known and others have been shedding light on. Most of the protocols that these organizations are following in the U.S. are based on they're called Dutch studies. They were done in the Netherlands, and they were very small studies, weak evidence, and they have been applied to children. And there are really no good studies since then. In fact, there's several studies that show that there's harm. And so they really have nothing to stand on.
So, Jill, let me ask you this question. I know you're speaking to doctors, but I want you to take just a moment to speak to parents because, we look up to doctors and we don't really ask a lot of questions of doctors. We say, okay, that's what you say. You're the experts on this. What should they be asking doctors who would recommend a certain protocol that they just don't feel right about when it comes to their children?
Right. Well, it breaks my heart that my profession has been captured by this ideology, and I want parents to know that there are good doctors out there that are looking out for really is best for their children. So, we say no child is born in the wrong body. We know that children, if they're supported through puberty, if they're having discomfort with their biological sex, that they will, when allowed to go through puberty, will be comfortable in their biological sex. Conservatively, 85%. That's a huge number.
That's overwhelming.
Right. Some studies even say more. And
that's considering the fact that you have all of the peer pressure and all this stuff on the outside. But still, if you just let them go through this process, they're going to come out pretty much on the other side where they need to.
Right. So we're here, the American College of Pediatricians and our coalition, to support parents and to say we're here for you.
Very quickly, where can folks get more information?
Yep. So the declaration will be launched tomorrow. It's doctorsprotectingchildren.org.
Okay.
And yep.
And it's going to be live on the website?
Yep, it'll be live. We will be having a press conference live at 10 Eastern that will be streamed on the website, doctorsprotectingchildren.org.
All right. Dr. Simon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate all the work that you guys do. All right, folks, stick with us, because on the other side of the break, the Senate voted within the last hour on the so-called Right to Contraception Act. It's actually the Deception Act, pushed by Chuck Schumer. We're going to be joined by James Langford, so don't go away.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there's the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
I'm Tony Perkins, your host. This is Washington Watch, and the website, TonyPerkins.com. Be sure and download the Stand Firm app. You'll have access not only to the Washington Stand, which is our news publication. You'll have access to Washington Watch and actually be able to create community. There's several different communities there where you can interact and even pray with one another and pray for our country. So go to the App Store and download the new Stand Firm app or text app to 67742. Earlier today, Senate Democrats, actually within the last hour, they failed to advance the misleadingly named Right to Contraception Act. While this failed legislation could be viewed as a messaging bill meant to distract voters from the economy, the border, and the Biden administration's disastrous foreign policy, this does not detract from the dangerous policies embedded in this bill, which we see consistently the Democratic Party trying to push at every opportunity. Joining me now to discuss this by phone, Senator James Langford from Oklahoma, a leading voice for the protection of life. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Homeland Security Committee and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Langford, welcome back to the program.
Tony, good to be with you again.
You know, never let a crisis go to waste. They've been fabricating this idea that contraception is under attack. I'm not sure where, certainly not in this country. But this was a lot more than contraception. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it is actually. There is no state, there's no jurisdiction anywhere that is either made contraceptive access illegal or is even trying to. So this is a completely manufactured crisis that they're bringing a piece of legislation on. The second big challenge that we've got on this, though, is not what was this message about contraceptives. It is what is in it that is such a major issue. So let me just tick through some of these. For the first time ever, it would eliminate the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, saying that what your faith is and your perspectives on anything doesn't matter anymore. Government's faith is more important than the individual's faith. So it strikes that out. It actually eliminate states like my own in Oklahoma that says we don't allow sex change operations for minors. It would take that right away from states and to say no, minors must be able to have sex change operations no matter where they are in the country.
Senator,
contraceptives.
Let me expand on that for just a moment, because we had a Supreme Court case just a few years back with Hobby Lobby, which comes from your home state of Oklahoma. Of course, it also included the Little Sisters of the Poor, where they built their whole defense on the Restoration of Religious Freedom Act. That would be completely wiped out under this legislation.
That is correct. This bill would literally say it doesn't matter what the faith is of an individual. If government disagrees with your faith, the government goes first, not your faith. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act is very clear to say government has a responsibility, but they have to defer to people's faith. That they have to be able to show that there's some imposing reason for that. This would say, no, government doesn't have to show that anymore. If we disagree with your faith is out.
That's huge.
So that is an enormous change that has never been done. That was tucked away inside of this bill, quote unquote, about contraceptives.
It also would put at risk what states have done in terms of protecting women from the sale of abortion pills via the mail. That would, many states require that a woman have a in-person appearance with a doctor so they know the gestation age of the baby, so on and so forth. This would trump what states have done.
That's correct. Yeah, this is trying to eliminate any kind of protections at all for women in any place that this particular group of Democrats disagrees with, and to say it doesn't matter what physicians in your state say, they disagree with your physician, and so they trump the idea of physicians in your state or even the need for a physician in your state. So that's again, this is sold as something about contraception. It is by far not.
Right. So I mean, this right there, that goes way beyond contraception to abortion.
Right. The majority of those are well-educated. The majority of abortions in America right now are done in do-it-yourself pills that they receive in the mail, and they do an abortion at home. That's how a lot of abortions are actually occurring now, and it is a dramatic change. It's something the Biden administration continues to press at every turn. They're trying to create more abortions in America, not fewer.
I mean, we hear constantly, I mean, this is the one thing the Democrats seem to be running on in this election cycle. They did it in the midterm election, abortion. They're running on abortion, now they're running on contraception. But the truth is not in what they're claiming. They're claiming that Republicans want to ban abortion nationwide. That's not the case. But if you look at the legislation that has actually been advanced by the Democrats, they want to eliminate all pro-life laws at the state level. So while they're accusing the Republicans of something they haven't even talked about, they're doing it. Did I lose you, Senator? I think I may have lost him. Well, I agree with myself. But that's actually what they're doing. They're claiming that Republicans are wanting to ban at the federal level all abortions. Now, that's my view. I believe life should be protected from the moment of conception on. But we've got to work to get there, and we have been working to get consensus to move this down the road. But there's no legislation that is being advanced to do what they're claiming. But on the other hand, they have actually passed, out of one chamber, legislation that would eliminate all state pro-life laws and force taxpayer funding of abortion on the entire nation. They are so deceptive, so dishonest. Please be very discerning what you believe, because the truth is in short supply. All right, after the break, Ken Blackwell joins me as we discuss election integrity initiatives with the November election approaching. The Biden administration using taxpayer dollars to do voter registration through the Small Business Administration. We'll talk about it next.
America was a bright light until the culture gave into darkness. But we won't. We're in a battle for the soul of our nation, between right and wrong, between truth and lies. At a time when the mainstream media is blocking Americans from truth, millions are searching for a source of trustworthy news that shines a light in the darkness. At this time of great need, FRC is lighting the way forward. For 40 years, Family Research Council and its partners have stood together to advance and defend biblical truth in government and culture. Between our flagship broadcast program, Washington Watch with Tony Perkins, to our news outlet, The Washington Stand, FRC is providing believers across the country with news they can trust from a biblical worldview. When you stand with FRC, you help light the way forward for America and the next generation. Go to frc.org/give.
Jesus said in John 15, "These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." In 2024, in these divided and uncertain times, how can this be possible? By abiding in Him through His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. In just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But more importantly, you will be abiding in Him daily. Find our Bible reading plan at frc.org/Bible. And join Tony Perkins each weekday for a 10-minute devotional inspired by the daily reading and designed to encourage you on this journey through the Bible. Listen on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, the grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever.
Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these sage cons yourself, join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us. Be sure and check out the website, TonyPerkins.com. And also, if you have not yet downloaded the Stand Firm app, it's the new Stand Firm app. Lots of tools there for you. It's very interactive. It will allow you to take action and contact your elected officials and stay up to date on what's happening here in Washington, D.C. and across the nation. So download the Stand Firm app, go to the App Store, or text APP, A-P-P, to 67742, and we'll send you a link. Our word for today comes from 2 Samuel chapter 14. So Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was concerned about Absalom. So Joab sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman and said to her, "Please pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning apparel, and do not anoint yourself with oil, but act like a woman who has been mourning a long time for the dead. Go to the king and speak to him in this manner." So Joab put the words in her mouth. Remembering how Nathan evaded David's detection with the story of the man and his sheep, Joab finds a woman to tell David a powerful, personal story that tugs on David's heartstrings. But here's the problem. If emotional appeals are not supported by truth, they can lead to disastrous outcomes, which this decision by David, inviting Absalom back, does just that. This emotive-based appeal drives public policy in our justice system today, leaving facts and truth behind. And the outcomes are often just as dangerous today as they were in David's day. I invite you to join us in our journey through the Bible. Text Bible to 67742. That's Bible to 67742, and join us on our journey through the Bible. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the program, yesterday the House Small Business Committee held a hearing to examine how the Biden administration has deputized federal agencies to push voter registration among Democrat-targeted groups in key swing states. Immediately after coming into office in 2021, President Biden signed an executive order that directs federal agencies to get involved in elections. Now, this order allows federal agencies to use tax dollars, that's your dollars, sometimes referred to as Biden bucks, in their electioneering efforts. So while the Small Business Administration targeted voters in key Michigan districts, as was discussed at yesterday's hearing, other federal agencies pushed a similar strategy in swing states throughout the country. Joining me now to discuss this and much more as it pertains to this fall's election is Ken Blackwell, FRC Action's Special Advisor for Election Integrity and the former Secretary of State for the state of Ohio. Ken, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, good to be with you.
So further explain what the House Small Business Committee exposed that the Biden administration is involved in and how unusual this is.
Well, they were concerned that taxpayer dollars were being used as part of a political strategy to turn out votes for Democrats. And they were concerned that, again, the Small Business Administration was outside of its scope of responsibilities in doing so. In 2020, we were concerned that Zuckerbucks were being used by nonprofits and local governments in a targeted fashion, and we put a stop to that.
Right.
And this is an attempt by the legislature, in this case Congress, to put a stop to this illegal, inappropriate use of taxpayer dollars for partisan political purposes, and in total rejection of a uniform application of taxpayer dollars.
So, Ken Blackwell, let me ask you this. Are there not federal laws prohibiting civil service employees in the executive branch of government from being involved in electioneering?
Yeah, you know, this administration rules for thee, but not for me.
So it's more lawlessness.
That's right. It's lawlessness without question.
So we have it being exposed, and this is part of the challenge. This is what makes people so angry, our listeners. And please don't get angry. Be anxious. Be angry for nothing but prayer with thanksgiving and supplication. Let your request be made known unto God. We're exposing it. The Republican Congress is exposing it, but they don't have the enforcement mechanisms. Is this something that the states can pick up and take action against if their states are being manipulated? Now, of course, a lot of this is happening in blue states, but if they're going into blue cities in red states, can attorney generals, can governors, can someone step in?
Yeah, all of the above. We talk about wherever we can take action, we need to take action. Because, look, Tony, this is putting a thumb on the scale.
Right.
This is lawlessness in its application, and this is destroying a even playing field for voters.
So let me step back for just a moment, Ken. I mean, we're all for people participating in the process. All right? I want people to vote. We do voter registration. Of course, we're we're non-political, we're nonpartisan, we are a nonprofit, and so we can do that. We're not the government. We're not using taxpayer dollars. But this is targeted. They're going into specific areas of states. And in some cases, what was exposed by this is that the Small Business Administration that gives out grants and does other things was doing this in conjunction with their official capacity.
Within the Biden administration, these federal agencies are becoming outposts and extensions of the DNC, the Democratic Party.
Right.
That is a total destruction of an even playing field. And again, we're repeating ourselves, that is lawlessness and a total disregard for the rules of the game.
When the Trump administration was in place, anytime that they would get close to a line like that, you would have the federal government, these agencies would push back. I mean, so it's like that does reveal that there's a deep state, and the deep state is for the left.
Oh, without question. And they will gaslight you. They will say, this can't be done, but when they're in power, they do it.
Right, right. So let's talk about something else. You've been involved in the state of Ohio. Of course, this last year, Ohio, very disappointing with the issue of abortion, the life issue being on the ballot, and basically eradicating all of the state's pro-life laws through this amendment that was put on and supported by outside groups. Now, there's evidence that has emerged that a lot of this was foreign money that came into the state. coming into other states for these ballot initiatives. The governor in Ohio is attempting to put an end to this foreign money coming into states to push these types of issues. Tell us about this.
Well, in 2004, Ohio passed laws that prohibited the foreign dollars going into the coffers of political candidates. I must say that we left a loophole, and that was foreign dollars going in to fund ballot initiatives. There is a Swiss billionaire, Hans-Georg Wyss, and he has put about $243 million into play in the United States through the 1630 Fund. That money then got laundered into 25 states, Ohio being one, and in those two issues that you mentioned, one, the issue of loosening the penalties on fentanyl, right. and two, sort of putting into permanent play abortion on demand. And what the governor and the state legislature have done is to make sure that that now is prohibited, because that does two things. It gives foreign influence on our domestic policy, and two, it drives out, and this is why the Democrats like it, it changes the composition, it affects the composition of who turns out to vote.
Right.
And elections are won or lost by who turns out to vote.
So, I mean, that raises a really interesting question in my mind is, what's the motivation for these foreign entities to sow, I mean, is this to sow seeds of moral confusion in our country by pushing, measures that would weaken laws against fentanyl, which is killing people, and eliminating our pro-life laws so that we see abortion on demand, up until the moment of birth? I mean, what's behind this?
Tony, it's a part of a grand scheme. One, to destroy our national sovereignty, and that's part and parcel to what's happening on our southern border, and I would tell you on our northern border also.
Yeah, I've heard
and the
that.
second is to devalue citizenship. And so this is a real struggle between the rule of law and our constitutional republic and a country that is run by an administrative state and a left-leaning central government.
The words of Ben Franklin that he spoke coming out of the Constitutional Convention when they asked him, what form of government do we have? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Those words have never been more relevant and true than they are today, because our freedoms that we enjoy can only be preserved if we have a moral foundation, an engaged citizenry that is informed, educated with a moral foundation. And as we lose those elements, we lose the republic.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important that things that we've been working on for 20 years, and that is the Republican Party platform that draws a distinction between what one side stands for and what we stand for. And as you know, the Democrats spent a whole lot of time of getting God and faith out of their platform. We've made sure that it stays in our platform, but you're absolutely right. If you can destroy the moral basis of the rules and regulations and the constitutional foundation of our country, you create a situation of relativism, and that is easy for a dictatorship,
Right.
for an administrative state to administer. Tony, this is what we know, that if elections are determined within what I call the margin of litigation, the left has put together a lawfare strategy that leans in their direction. What we have to do in terms of getting our base out is creating a margin of victory that is too big to rig. That's why it's so important, that's implicit in what you just said, that we are engaged, right, and we're not on the sidelines, but we're on the front lines of this policy battle.
And even though we're facing these headwinds and all of these challenges and issues there, we cannot be discouraged. We cannot, wave a white flag. I mean, you just can't do it. We have to persevere. We have to engage. We have to be informed. We have to engage others. And that's the only way we prevail. I mean, this is, it used to be, Republicans would take over, Democrats would take over, and there was very little difference. But as you pointed out, the party platforms over the last decade and a half have begun to really highlight the tremendous gap that stands between the two parties, the ideological divide between the two parties. It is quite significant.
As Reagan said, we must paint in bold colors. Yeah. We can't paint in pastels. And as you and I know, we had a friend who just died recently, Dean Nelson, who was over the Frederick Douglass Foundation. I used to tell Dean all the time, my dad was a devotee of Frederick Douglass, and growing up, I had Frederick Douglass sayings plastered on my wall in my bedroom. And one of my favorite was, those who are whooped easiest are whooped most often. We cannot be beaten on this.
That's right. Absolutely. I want to talk here in just a moment about what we need to do going into this November election, but I want to go back to what you're working on in Ohio and this prohibition against foreign funds coming in for these voter initiatives. How widespread is that across the country in terms of other states where foreign dollars are going in?
Well, we know that the 1630 Fund put $100 million in 25 states to push these ballot initiatives. So it is widespread, and they're concentrating in those states that are marginally red or red, where they in fact need to drive out their base. And so that's what we see here. Not only trying to shape the policy domain of these respective states, but to push voters out to change the outcome of elections.
So this is an initiative that other states need to pick up and move forward as well, prohibiting that foreign funding from coming in to tip the scales in their elections.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think everybody should be free to participate and give their money, but it needs to be people who are Americans.
That's right.
That have an interest and a concern about this country.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. We just got a couple minutes left, Ken Blackwell. What do people need to be doing as we move toward this November election?
We need to be engaged. That means that we have to register to vote, we have to vote, and we have to vote early, and we have to vote on Election Day. We have to make sure that whenever we can stay within the lines of what is legal, we do, and we do well, and we do better than the other side.
Yeah. I'm going to go, you said something, for a long time, we're about Election Day. Show up on Election Day and vote. And I still think that's the best plan. But it's changed. And we saw a great example of this in Arizona in the midterm election, where the Democrats, they did early voting by mail and other means. Republicans waited to the day of election, and all of a sudden there was a problem with machines. Right. The lines got long, people got tired, they went home, and by a small margin, the Republicans lost. We need to be banking those votes prior to Election Day.
Absolutely. And we need to work on voter registration. I've said this to the National Rifle Association, and I said to groups all across this country. We still have a lot of voters who are concerned, but who are not registered and who are not engaged. And that's why it is so important that we go through our churches, we do whatever we can to get people registered, period. And then once they're registered, get them to vote.
All right, Ken Blackwell, that's our marching orders.
Good to be with you, Tony.
Always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, I leave you once again with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you have taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.